Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Sports Con with the Con Man. I am your host, the Con Man. And tonight I have my co-host and one of my best friends in the world. And we're going to talk some stuff tonight. I want to enlighten y'all to my good friend, Mike Samuel. How you doing, my brother?
I'm doing well, Michael. How are you today?
I'm good. You know, Mike, I wanted to have you on my show because you're my co-host. But besides that, what you have done is, to me, incredible. Before we go any further, Mike, I have to do this. I want to give a shout out to my producer, my boss, Key Williams, on her birthday. Got to do that because without her, none of this would happen. None of this was going to happen. For real. But anyway, Key, happy birthday and many more.
Happy birthday, Key.
But now getting back to you, Mike, I did a little bit of research.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you were the man back in the day. You had way more publicity than I did way back in the day, and you deserved it. And I know it came with trials and tribulations, and I just want you to come on this show and talk about you and give you your roses. So, Mike, what gave you the idea to even write this journal?
Well, it came from some prodding from some friends, and I just started, and it just was something that I had probably talked about or thought about for years. And people would tease me, "You should write a book. You have a good memory. You should write a book." So I just started, and as I was developing what I thought I wanted to write, it started to just move away from play-by-play with basketball stories. Yes, there's some in there, but it started to bring out some things that I hadn't thought about in a long time, and then it started to bring up some things that were really present in my life at that time. And you and I've talked about this a bunch offline, and it was just one of those things where I got involved with it, and it just became part of my life, for a really sort of just a capsulized time, 6-7 years. But a lot happens in that period of time. I meet a lot of people. I have a lot of experiences. I meet my wife in the middle of this. So, it's just a lot that happens. And I thought, let me tell that story. Let me tell that story and include the basketball stories, the experiences that a little bit about. But that's really where it came from. It just came from sort of just being curious over, can I do it? Can I get it documented? Can I hold it together as I do it? Can I walk to some things that are a bit troubling that I had to deal with over time? I had this long conversation with my wife the other night, Michael, about this over some things that I haven't written yet. It's sitting in my head, ready to go at some point. but some of it's, and I know I've sort of teased this in other conversations you and I've had, some of it's hard to write. And again, not to be overly dramatic with this, but, how to write it, how to tell it. And, I'll share one thing with you that, as I've thought about this and what I want to be able to say is, again, I don't have the magic potion to this, but maybe my story, some of the things I had to deal with, some of the success I had, some of the difficulties I had, maybe I can help someone. Maybe. I don't know.
And that's why, Mike, besides you being my co-host, I wanted you to come on and talk about your journal, because I believe it can definitely help someone who's watching, someone who's listening, who can maybe benefit from your story.
It's interesting, Mike, and you know this too, right? That when we would play back in the day, you never knew who was watching you, right? You didn't know if somebody came from out of town, or you're playing out of town and you're playing in front of someone's father or a grandfather or a grandmother or a mother, and the impression that you may have left on them. And I've had, a number of experiences where I was approached by people after a basketball game that had seen me play, years before, and all of a sudden saw my development and wanted to come say hello. Or I run into someone, Michael, that one of my last games at Fairhaven when I was a senior, who had talked to the Bryant coach about me. And he had seen me play in a tournament game with the buddies. And that was sort of how that relationship began with that particular school and that coaching staff and that basketball program. And, I always took pride in the fact that it didn't matter where I was playing, I was going to play the same way, because I didn't know. I didn't know who was going to see me. I didn't know what impressions I was going to leave. And I always wanted to leave a good impression, good, bad, or indifferent, if I played well or not, if my team played well or not. So that was important to me. And when I heard that, I was, one of those situations where you kind of get knocked over when someone says that to you, like, oh, I had no idea. I had no idea the trail of this and what has happened with other people. And, so that's a cool aspect of the story, I think, that, that you have that level of experience where you're just meeting people everywhere you go. And, again, you're leaving impressions on people, and hopefully they're positive, and hopefully they have some interest. And, in some situations, people followed me for years that I had no idea about, that somehow they reach out to me through your podcast, through other situations I've been involved in, that all of a sudden I'm hearing from people I haven't heard from in years. And that's, Michael, that's so cool that I hear from some people that, I just recently, my birthday was last week, and I'm hearing from people I haven't heard from in a while. And they say, I heard from someone that you were doing a podcast. So I watched the podcast. So I thought I'd reach out. I hadn't heard from these people, Michael, since I was in 4th or 5th grade, so that's pretty cool. And, that's really the nice side of this, that you kind of get reintroduced to people, and hi, how are you, and what's going on? And that leads to, 20 texts during the day. And that's a nice aspect of, getting exposed and being involved with yourself, and just talking about the book.
Well, Mike, also, for people who don't know, this guy was a bad man. He averaged over 20 points his junior year, and I did a little bit of research. You're a little bit before my time, but I mean, you did the damn thing, and it had to be tough, because you was all over the newspapers, you was all over everywhere, and it must have been tough for you to somehow immigrate or somehow get to a point where you had to focus and you had to do with your focus. But with the fact that you had so much notoriety, and not too many people from New Bedford came with that notoriety. How do you deal with that?
So it was hard. It was hard in the beginning, and it was hard all the way through. And, I looked at some of that was, and this is some of the stuff I've had to kind of deal with when I've been writing. And I sort of did a reanalysis of this. And I thought, was this some of this self-inflicted on my part? And then I'm like, no, it's not. It was not me. It was, my accomplishments being noticed. And, there's just a lot of, we're, as I mentioned to you earlier, a bunch of young guys running around, right? And I happened to get noticed for what I was doing. And the other side of this, Mike, is I knew nobody was putting the time that I was putting in. I knew nobody was going to the camps that I was going to, and some of the extraordinary things that my dad and I were doing as far as training and just different stuff that I'll hold for the book, as far as those things. But so I knew how hard I was working, and I knew there was going to be, and the payoff wasn't getting my name in the paper and my picture in the paper. My payoff was I wanted to go to school for nothing. That's what I wanted. I wanted to find a place that I could go, that I could succeed. That was the goal. And, there were a lot of tough situations I had to go through with different players, coaches for periods of time where it was hard. And because, a lot of those situations, Mike, and it wasn't until I go to Holy Family for a period of time and then to Fairhaven where I'm always the best player. And it took a little while to find where I would be playing where I wasn't the best player. And, the buddies teams was some of that. And I mentioned to you that 1978 team that goes to the state finals at Fairhaven, I wasn't the best player there. And that was eye-opening for me to kind of take a back seat because I wasn't used to that. And, it pays off in the end. But that was really difficult to go through because I've got to leave my whatever ego I have to leave that at home because it's not the same as I've been treated. And unfortunately I had this thing in my head where I expected to be treated a certain way because I had a pretty good resume. And, and so as a kid, you're hard-headed over that, but that's how I looked at it. Again, how hard I worked, the results I've had, and I had this growth that was just in the high speed lane, Mike, as far as from the time I started playing, as I mentioned to you one other time, by the time I get to Holy Family, that's just unheard of. That happens. And again, it's a lot of training, a lot of practice, and getting exposed to things and, not being afraid and stepping out and doing some things that, I was completely out of my personality for a time. And I mentioned to you, my dad was the guy that was finding these challenges that said, okay, we're going to go try out for this team, and get introduced to the buddies and what that led to. And all of that led to was just getting exposed to different teams, different players, heavy competition, and, trying to just continue to develop. And that was the real challenge of just developing. And where would that land with whatever team I was playing for, whatever school? And, and one of the things, Michael, that you and I talked about, and unfortunately comes out of this a little bit is I sort of looked at it as going from school to school is very transactional. And that hurt me because I lost sight of what Holy Family stood for in their tradition. And I looked at Fairhaven the same way, and that was much different. And, there are a number of situations that, I'm thinking, I'm not real happy here. I don't really see a future after 78. Do I leave? And that's the conversation you and I had about going to play in the Boston League, in the City League. And then there was a conversation, do I go to Tabor Academy? So there was all of these things that were coming that sort of kind of makes you unsteady and uncomfortable as a kid because you're still trying to find a home, right? You're trying to find some place where you're comfortable, that you can succeed. Is there a path for you there? And eventually at Fairhaven there is, right? So that comes out of some just really hard times at different points. But that, has success and it has the results I was looking for to a certain extent. But, again, there were times where if I had my way and sort of just reacting to different situations, I may not have stayed there.
Well, Mike, let me keep it real with you. For those of you who don't know, Buddies was like the gateway for a lot of us young players. We got to experience some great talent from other parts of the state. And I saw a picture of you, and I am not going to joke about it. You was with all brothers from Boston.
Yeah.
And I'm like, in order for this guy to play with the brothers, who we won't mention right now, you had to have that specific talent or the talent to play with them. And when I saw that picture, I was like, whew, this guy had it, and you had it. What did it take or what did you feel when you were playing with them, as opposed to playing with New Bedford, Fairhaven, Acushnet, Dartmouth?
So my introduction to that was coming out of a buddies tournament that we won. We won the Waltham tournament, which was, you and I both know, was a large, heavily competitive tournament. This is the spring of 1977. And I got invited to try out, and I didn't have any idea who this was, what this was really about. This was one of those situations. My father had a conversation with 10 people, and one of them was somebody that you and I both know from reputation, which was Al Brodsky. And come try out. So, Michael, I've never been to that part of Boston before. And it was very eye-opening seeing what I saw. And my father, I don't think, had been to that part of, my father had gone to school for a little while at Bentley when Bentley was downtown in Boston. So, we drive into Roxbury. And I remember parking on the street, and the Roxbury Boys Club was to my right. And I'm standing looking at him as he's getting out of the car, and I'm seeing overhead train tracks running by homes. And I don't know what I'm seeing, Michael. And my father looks at me, and he's sort of smirking because he knows I've never seen this. And he walked up to me and he quietly said, "You don't know how lucky you are." And I was like, okay, we're entering something I have no idea what I'm getting into here. So we go into the gym. I think there's about 500 kids there. And it was one of those things where you were chosen. There were four of the guys that were chosen with me, and we played games of 7. And you played, if you won, you stayed on, but you didn't play more than 2 games in a row.
Yeah.
Michael, my team did not lose for 2.5 hours. And I didn't do anything extraordinary. I handled the ball. I never turned it over. I made open shots. I made the right pass. I had a big guy with me who I tried to remember his name and I couldn't. But this kid was about 6'7", 6'8", very, very long. He would post up nice. All I did, Michael, was feed him. And what did he do? Every time he grabbed a rebound, he's looking for me because he knows if I have the ball, I'm going to give it to him. And so we dominated for the day. And I remember, this was early in the morning, and I was never really good in the morning as far as working out and playing. But for some reason, something clicked that morning. And I remember the head coach going up to my father and saying, "I really love how he plays defense, and I really love how he handles the ball." Nothing else. And again, I just played steady. I didn't do anything fantastic. My team never loses, and that was a big notice because I'm back there the next week to continue going through the tryouts.
But Mike, what was that experience like? Because I promise you, they didn't know who the hell you was, and you go in there, you know who the hell they were. And what was that experience?
It was crazy because I had never been around that many kids before, and we're all there for one reason, and I'm not even sure what the reason is yet. I'm just playing. And I can remember, Michael, the noise in there and how hot it was getting because everyone's running up and down. And, but I just sort of, again, it just sort of clicked for me that morning where I'm playing well and I'm just riding it. And you've been down that road too before. When you're playing well, you don't want to come off the floor, right? You don't want to talk to anybody. You just want to keep playing. And that's what I felt like. I just avoided everybody. It's sort of like the major league pitcher when someone's pitching a no-hitter and nobody goes to talk to him. That's what I felt like. Don't come talk to me. Don't distract me. I'm ready to get back on the floor any minute. And it was overwhelming because all of a sudden, I'm playing with these four guys, and we're playing against everybody in the gym is coming up against us. And I'm not really noticing any other great players. I'm concentrating on what my team can do. And we beat some pretty good players that day. And you saw some of them in that picture that we beat. Sure. We beat their 5. And so my notice was I could lead a team. But what's interesting was I had not been in that position when I was at Holy Family that winter. When I had gone to play with the buddies, I started to play in that position a little bit more because it was required. So, but I wasn't, it wasn't foreign for me to handle the ball. And I had to really, at Holy Family, I had to learn how to play, on the ball defense and help defense, or I wasn't going to get on the floor. So, that was easy for me. And, I could stay in front of my guy and don't foul him. I could handle the ball, not turn it over. Making shots was something that was easy for me at that point, and just making the right pass. Lots of fast breaks, lots of bounce passes for layups, and we just kind of cruised. And we were never really challenged the entire day. And I was ecstatic to get an invite back because, Michael, that goes on through, so that's probably April. Tryouts go through probably the end of May until I know that I've made the team. And, by then I sort of figured out what the whole thing was about and start to learn who these guys are the numbers are dwindling every week. But then you get introduced to other guys who come in, right? So the Talisman group comes in, the Jack McMahon group comes in. So there all of a sudden there's two other guys that are now part of us. And, so it was very much a cultural mix, but, never an issue with those teams, with those guys, actually, in that team. We were a very close-knit team. We didn't go anywhere without each other when we went away to play in that tournament. And they were just a great group of guys. And what's interesting is the following winter, one of those guys wins the state tournament. My team in 78 goes to the state finals. One of the players leads the city league in scoring as a sophomore. So, there's some pretty good players on that team. And, at the end result of that, a bunch of those guys play on the shootout team in 1980. I believe a good core of us go to school on scholarship. Two of them go off and play baseball at major universities. So athletically, we were really good. As basketball players, we were really good. And that impacts the state of Massachusetts for the next 3 seasons, because there was an article that came out in the Boston Globe when I was a junior, and it was analyzing, it was the year of the junior. Almost every guy that was on that team is listed in that article, which was pretty cool to see. And, so the guys from Southeastern Mass were myself, Tony Williams, and Marlon Burns were listed in that article. Because we were all in the same class. We were in the class of 1980. So, there's a pretty well-rounded, the depth in that class as far as talent goes was pretty good.
And Mike, what I want to bring to the viewers is that, we here in New Bedford, whatever, we think we're good. We think we all that. But when you get a chance to go elsewhere and you see the talent level in Boston or Worcester or whatever, then you find out maybe I'm not that damn good. But you were that damn good. And that is a tribute to you. But I'm more wondering how you dealt with the fact that, okay, I might be the man for Haven, I may be, but you go to Boston, different level. When did you feel that you were comfortable enough in your skills that you could compete with them?
So going back to that Waltham tournament, in the first round of that tournament, we played the Talisman team, which included Timmy O'Shea, who goes on to play at Boston College, Jimmy Sullivan, who the following fall would be the player of the year in Massachusetts, and Tommy Sullivan, who's playing at Don Bosco. So they're loaded. And my team is myself, Mike Borden, Jimmy Lanigan. So there's a bunch of us that are pretty good. And it really took one play by Jimmy Lanigan for me to just get confident over the fact that, okay, I'm a little nervous about this because I've not played at this level of competition before. And he makes the play, and I sort of snap out of it. Michael, I had 36 that night.
What?
Yeah, I couldn't miss. And in that little gym, right? That Waltham gym was small. And it was like you step 2 feet over half court and you're almost in shooting range.
I remember the gym very well.
Yeah.
Yes,
so they couldn't find me and they didn't respect me. That was the thing. I was new to them and they kept on waiting for me to miss. So they were concentrating on Mike Borden, which was the right thing to do because Mike could go off of 40 any minute.
Absolutely.
And, yeah. So I just kept drifting all night. They were playing zone, and I could find holes, and they weren't looking for me. And we beat them that night. We moved on and won the tournament. But it was that night, Mike, that I realized that I can play. I can play here. I can do some things. And it was interesting going through that tournament because every game was different. I don't score like that again in that tournament. I'm in double figures every game, but all of a sudden we're playing the Waltham Hawks in the second round, and that's a really grinding game, right? I think I may have had like 14 points, but we all had between 12 and 14, 16 points. It was a bunch of us to get that win. And then we go play Lee School in the final with Carl Hobbs.
Okay. Ooh, Lee School. Now we're talking. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mike. Now we're talking.
So that game is on a Saturday, or I think it was a Sunday afternoon. And so that gym, as you remember, only had bleachers on one side.
Mm-hmm.
I bet half of those bleachers were college coaches. And we're talking, we're in the junior division. We're not playing in the senior division where, we still have room to grow and climb. But that gym is sold out that night or that afternoon. And we won. So a couple of different plays. There was a foul call late in the game, and a technical gets called. So I get asked to go shoot the technical fouls, and I missed both of them, Mike. Next time down, we have the ball. I hit a jumper, it ties the game. And actually put us within one. Jimmy Lanigan makes a play. We go up one. So it's Lee School's ball. Clock is running down. And my man is running the baseline to the corner. And I see one of the guards come down the lane. I step in and take a charge. And it's called the charge. Game over. I'm lying on my back, Michael. And Jimmy Lanigan comes to pick me up and walks me underneath the basket. And he's holding on to me. And I look over his shoulder. And the kid I drew the charge on is rolling down the floor, fighting the referee over that call.
Oh, I'm sure. Oh,
so everybody comes running out of the stands to break this up. So you talk about what was that like? Imagine seeing that, a kid from New Bedford playing. I've been playing in this tournament for a week, and this is the end result to it. Is I'm watching a referee get beat up. I've never seen that before, right? You read about those things. I never saw it in New Bedford. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I never saw it. So it was a very eye-opening experience, and you realize that, when you're there and you're playing in with that competition, you have to be ready. And if you're not ready, you're going to get embarrassed. And I love that competition. I love going up there to play. I love playing in those series of those tournaments that existed between Lexington and Arlington and Roxbury and Dorchester. I love playing up there. And it was to be honest, Michael, it was very difficult coming back to play in the New Bedford area because I didn't think, the competition wasn't there. And I just thought that, I'm having a hard time adjusting. And I can remember at one point even getting adjusted to how the games were being refereed, that the contact wasn't allowed. You weren't really allowed to play very aggressively. And so that was very difficult to get adjusted to, where it wasn't difficult for me anyways to get used to that particular competition and get ready to play in it.
Now, Mike, you talked about the refereeing and the atmosphere. Do you think that had any effect when you came back to Fairhaven, Holy Family? What impact did it have on your game? Because, again, the talent level out here at that time was not as good as what you experienced.
It was hard, Michael, because I was, I had developed a nice mid-range game where I could actually get to the rim on some plays. And I was in Southeastern Mass. It came down to too many guys stepping in on me and taking and drawing charges and coming underneath me where I didn't think there were actually fouls being called. And I remember, Michael, my junior year playing at Fairhaven, and I got called, I forget who we were playing, but I got called for traveling 3 times. The team was pressing us, and I got called for traveling 3 times. And I was frustrated. Like, I have these moves I've been doing all summer, playing in summer leagues everywhere. And I remember having a conversation with my father. He said, well, you're probably going to have to adjust that because they probably have never seen those moves before. That's why you're getting called for a travel. So that was hard. It was difficult to adjust. And again, I didn't have any problem adjusting when I went up to play in Boston, or if I was playing in New York or Connecticut, and knowing the competition I was going to play against. It was difficult coming home and getting used to that, where, my game gets split up a little bit, where I've become more of an outside shooter, and I really can't get inside, because if I get inside, I'm going to get charges are going to be called, guys are going to step in, and I'm playing by the time I'm a junior or senior at Fairhaven, we don't have much of a bench, so I can't get in foul trouble. I can't sit, so I have to be careful, and that, I think, hurt me. And I think eventually hurts our team a little bit, that I can't be overly aggressive. I have to really become an efficient, which I was becoming as time went on, an efficient outside shooter. And, so that's a redevelopment of my skill set, but I still like playing up in Boston. I still like playing with that competition where, it was, the buddies would press and run, and I love to press because I could play, as I said earlier, I could play defense pretty well at that point. And I love to run. I love to really kind of step on the accelerator and go and get easy baskets. And I wasn't looking to score. I very much decided to develop as a distributor. And that became difficult when I came home, because I didn't have those players. I didn't have that ability where you could actually run a fast break and run it structurally correct and get layups. It was really hard to do that. But that's one of the things I brought to Fairhaven when I went there as a sophomore, was I could lead a fast break. And again, I'm not looking to score. I want to distribute, because I really started to enjoy the fact of making that right pass, getting someone an easy basket. That was really cool to do. And that was much different than how I was brought up, where I was brought up to score, and I was taught to score. I was given those lessons to do that. And I still had that in me, but I had learned to appreciate the fact of making that right pass.
And Mike, you know me, I keep it real. That picture you sent me, you were the only white guy in the damn picture. It was all brothers. I said, you must have had the skills in order to be in that picture, in order to be on that team. To me, that tells me you were that guy.
Well, again, I had a different skill set, right? I was, fundamentally, I was pretty good coming out of Holy Family, because that was drilled into you, right? The basic stuff, and it was kept simple. So I could bring something else to that team that nobody else could. There were guys that could score. Guys could really play, right? They just could play.
Oh,
but I could, and I didn't get frustrated. I worked hard we were practicing every Saturday morning. Every Saturday morning, my dad and I are driving to Roxbury, 9 o'clock in the morning, 9:30 in the morning. Practice would start for a couple of hours, and then I would turn around and go home, and back to Acushnet. So again, getting involved with those guys, and again, they were just super good guys, right? They were young kids. They knew each other, and what more importantly, Michael, they really knew who they were, and that was interesting to see and watch that. And they were very embracing with me. I mean, there was no issues with me at all. And I have they're friends of mine, they're competitors of mine all the way through high school. But again, I brought something else to them that they didn't have. If I would make that pass to a player that felt more comfortable kind of taking a couple of dribbles and making a move inside. I wasn't looking to score, but I could handle the ball. I wouldn't make mistakes. I could play defense really well. And that's something they didn't have. Not that they couldn't do it, but that was not their primary skill set. And that wasn't primarily why they were there. And, those guys could appreciate that with me. And they just really saw how hard I worked.
And that's a true testament to your skills and ability. And I'm sure a lot of people who would be in your situation might choke, might not feel comfortable playing in that environment. But also you performed very well. That's a tribute to you.
And thank you for that, Mike. But I can remember when I was at Holy Family, and I was going for those tryouts, and I was there, and I was telling my friends what I was doing. They thought, what are you talking about? I've never even heard of this. And I would tell them I told them about the Waltham tournament, who I was playing against and who I was playing with. And so for them, it was even more eye-opening, because they're not involved. They're hearing it from me every Monday morning when I would walk in, and not really knowing what the end result of all of it's going to be down the line in 3 or 4 years. But when they heard all this stuff, they had no idea what I was talking about. And then when the articles comes out that I made the team, they were like, "Oh, now I get it. You're telling me that Ronnie Perry played on that team, and Felton Sealy was on that team, and Craig Watts was on those teams." Yeah, those are those stepping stones, Michael, that I didn't have any idea existed, but all of a sudden became very important to me in sort of what my path was.
Now, for people who do not know, Ronnie Perry was at Catholic Memorial, and I believe, I could be wrong, I think he averaged close to 35 points per game, and he went on to play at Holy Cross and was a phenomenal basketball player. Got drafted by the Boston Celtics, ended up getting cut, one of the last cuts, if I recall, from the Boston Celtics. But Ronnie Perry was incredible as a high school athlete.
Yeah, and he was a pretty good college player. He was an All-American by the time he was done at Holy Cross. So yeah, that's there's a story there with me with Holy Cross also that I'll save for the book Through Holy Family. That there's some discussion and there's some talk about some things happening with that. So I'll hang on to that story for the book. But yeah, Ronnie was, for me, that was the standard, right? When I saw that and I started getting exposed to basketball and I saw him play, and I had the opportunity to see him play once in the Waltham tournament when I was just coming up with the buddies. I'd seen him play at Holy Cross once. I saw him play in the Garden against the University of Cincinnati, which was a four-team tournament. So yeah, he was the guy as far as I was concerned. And there were other great players around him, but I didn't think there was anybody else that could really kind of hold it as he could and play the way he could play. And again, I heard those stories about him as a freshman when I had gone to Holy Family, that Catholic Memorial had come to the Kennedy Center and played. And I heard those stories. And Mr. Nebriga would always tease me about, "Oh, did you see Holy Cross play on Saturday? Did you see the play that Perry made?" And he would demonstrate for me in practice what the play was. And all of a sudden, I'm trying to mimic some of this stuff as far as what's taking place. I wasn't that player, but it was just interesting that there's that legacy and there's that history with that school and in Catholic Memorial in general. So yeah, I had great appreciation for Ronnie as far as what he could do, and just again, I thought he was a standard bearer for me for a high school athlete and for a college player that just kind of readjusted my view as far as what sports could look like and what a basketball player could look like.
Well, Mike, let me tell you something that you may not know. They came down to CYO, and one of your former, I guess he was a coach when you played at Holy Family. I think he might have been Mickey Gonzalez. Mm-hmm. Mickey Gonzalez tried for the Boston Shootout, and unfortunately, he had to go against Ronnie Perry and Dwan Chandler, and Mickey was like one of the last people cut from the Boston Shootout. And I was there, I know, and it was tough to see because Mickey was so great. I don't know if you ever got to see Mickey. Mickey was phenomenal, the best of the best, but he ended up getting cut, maybe because he wasn't from Boston and it was the Boston Shootout, but my man was great. But anyway, getting back to you, let's talk about your basketball journal. Let's talk about what inspired you. Let's talk about a little bit what is in the journal. Let's talk about whatever you want to talk about, my friend.
So what's in the journal? So what's in the journal is my story as far as beginning as a basketball player, beginning as an athlete, the experiences that I have, as I mentioned earlier, some of the players that I meet, the teams that I play for, the teams I play against, just the overall atmosphere of being a kid from a small town, even small town outside of New Bedford, that is just really looking to get exposed and trying to gain as much experience as I can from different things, from playing at Buttonwood Park, playing at the Boys Club for some period of time, which was really short for me, but I was there, and you and I you're friends with Robbie Mendes, and I had a brief experience with him while I played there for an afternoon, which is yet to be written, but that's going to be included. So those experiences of just getting involved, getting exposed, meeting people, and I use the word, you and I talked about networking, which was not a phrase being used, but that's what it was, right? It was that network of players that was showing up in the parks, showing up in the summer leagues, showing up at the rec gym to play. And so it's that story of just me developing the issues that I run across as far as different situations I have to deal with as a kid, and also the same situations my family has to deal with. Because, a lot of this, as I've mentioned to you previously, was not just new to me, it was new to them. It was new to all of us. And we all handle it differently. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. And that's difficult to kind of wrap your head around as you're going through this. And, one of the things that I had to experience and had to learn, Michael, was not to get distracted. But there's enough distractions that occur that, could have, pushed this a different direction. And those were hard. Those were hard to go through for all of us. And I'll share something with you. And this is, I've written this, but I'll share this quick story. There was a time where, and I'm, again, not patting myself on the back, but my mom and dad had gone to a dinner party, and it was a business dinner for a company my father was working for in New Bedford. And somehow the word gets out that I'm their son. And they're referred to as Michael Semiel's father and son by name. That's how they're introduced to different people. And my mother and father came back, and it was the next morning, and I hear these stories, and they were sort of laughing at this, but that's how my sister was referred to. She was referred to as Michael Semiel's sister.
That's tough.
Yeah. And so that was hard. That was hard for all of us to kind of understand. And there's some humor into it, but then there is some real hard feelings with this as far as what do we do with this as a family, because it hurt my sister. And that was difficult for me to see because it's not intended, right? There was no malice here. It just happened. And my mother and father got a kick out of it, and it occurred to them, that situation occurred with them multiple times, that they were referred to as the mother and father. So you're Michael's father, you're Michael's mother. And they always got a kick out of it. But, when my sister would be referred to as that, and never mind the fact that she was following me in school for a period of time at Holy Family. And you have that situation where you have teachers referring to you, oh, you're Michael's sister. And, that's hard. And I could not fix that with her. And that was difficult with our relationship. And, I wanted her to kind of find her own path, as you want your sister to, and you care about your sister. So, when I meant things going sideways, there's some situations there that become difficult. And, I'm getting enough notoriety that, some of it is okay and some of it's great. But some of it, I'm like, as I said earlier about, when I had played at Holy Family, I'm hoping that was some of that would get deflected and reflected back on the team. That, it's our success. It's not just my success, but that's not how it was phrased in newspapers and conversations. And that was difficult to work through. So that's what the book is about, is just really trying to tell that story of just kind to work through these things, trying to keep my head on straight as I'm doing this. As I mentioned to you earlier, as a young kid, you're getting all this attention. Some of that's not, I don't handle it well. And, you have to kind of find your place and find your comfort level with this. And, just sort of the perseverance that I have with it and continue to kind of move forward. Sometimes it goes left or right. It doesn't have a straight line, but it just comes down to just putting in the time, putting in the effort, try not to be so distracted with this. And again, my father had always stressed, make sure you're looking at the big picture with this. Don't get stuck with all of this stuff in your head as far as what's going on around you, which was difficult to even acknowledge what was happening and then trying to process it, which was just hard for me. And it was hard. Again, I mentioned this earlier. It was hard for all of us to really understand what was taking place, because you don't really know how large it is, Michael, as far as the attention and the exposure, and how that, sort of rubs off on teammates, where teammates are looking at you, and that's really hard and really difficult, where, it again turns out, well, how come he's getting that attention? And, Michael, I dealt with that. It seemed like every season, probably except for one, and it even happens when I'm at Bryant, that I had issues with just weird things with people's perception of certain things. And again, I've had many reflections on, is it me? Am I causing this? Is this something I've done? And I've looked at it as, I haven't, right? It's just me. It's just, and maybe it's some baggage that I have. I'm not sure. I've never been able to solve that. And I sort of stopped solving it to a certain extent, but that's the story, right? That's the story of just a kid developing, a kid from a small town, the time and the efforts that go into this, the number of people that touch me, the number of things that I get involved with, which was always about, again, I mentioned earlier, about developing and getting better, and not being afraid to try things, and not being afraid to go out and play. Now, there are some situations, Michael, that I probably have overplayed in my time. But one of the things that doesn't happen, I suffer some injuries, but I never suffer a bad injury. I never blow out a knee. I never break a bone, even though my injury at Bryant was probably that. So I was lucky, and I conditioned myself hard enough, and I was smart enough to sometimes to dial it back where I'd be okay. But I was lucky there, because I knew some players that had injuries that never recovered from them. And back then there wasn't the technology to take care of, a bum knee at some point, or, a shoulder issue. I had bumps, and I had bruises, and I had sprains, and I had pulls. I had all that, but I never had that dramatic injury where all of a sudden I'm lost for a season and I can't play. So I was lucky.
And Mike, let me tell you real quick. You know me. I got over 50 years experience. I know what I'm talking about. When you were playing, a lot of the talk was, he must be an egomaniac, or he must, because you were getting so much notoriety, people didn't get to know you. They got to know the media. They got to know what was written in articles. And maybe they should have took the time to find out about you as an individual. And I have to admit, I might have been one of them, because I read so much things. I said, who is this guy? What's going on? And it's not you, it's the media. But sometimes the media can play a role. I think that's what played a major role, because you got so much notoriety as a young kid. We didn't even talk about before you got to high school. So you got so much notoriety. I think a lot of people had resentment, or don't even get to know you. Now I get to know you. You were nothing like that. You're not like nothing like that. But the perception was that you might have been like that.
Yeah, and it was interesting is the New Bedford area, including those surrounding suburbs. They're in our eyes it was big, but it's small, right? So the community that's playing basketball and involved with that is a small group, right? Everyone knows each other. You sort of bump into each other as time goes on. But Michael, you and I don't bump into one another.
Nope.
Right? We don't. So yeah, it was difficult for even I've had some conversations with some people at different times in the last probably couple of years, and it came from other texts that I was having with them, and and one of the things I heard was, well, we didn't have to worry about you. We knew you could play, but we didn't know you. Right? I played with some of these players on buddies teams. I don't get to know them, and because we're just playing, we're not hanging out. We're not really doing much except for showing up for games and going back home when we're done. And I'll see you tomorrow night. That's what it turns out to be. So yes, I agree with that there is this disconnect over getting to know me, but then there is me, right? At some point, I put up a shield on some of this where, I'm trying to deflect some of it. I just want to play, right? I want to play. I want to help my team win. And ultimately that was it. And if it rubbed people the wrong way, which it did, I can't control that. And I learned that painfully, that I can't control it. I can't make somebody like me. I can't make somebody, get close to me, because at some point, as I said, I'm putting up a shield and trying to keep you away now, because I don't trust. I had
Right.
real trust issues with that. And this is where my coaches really helped me, developing really good relationships. My relationship with Mr. Nebriga, and he coached a bunch of players, was really good.
Yes. Oh,
And,
yes.
As I've told this story before, I didn't ask anything of him. I wasn't looking for special treatment. My point was, just give me the opportunity. Let me try. If I'm not good enough, don't play me. That's what it was. I wasn't looking for anything. And so, but when it happens, it almost was like, oh, we expect that. He left. I left my junior high, which had a freshman class, Michael. I could have stayed there for ninth grade, but I wanted to play at a different level of competition. I wanted to play for him. And so when they saw that I did well at Holy Family, it was sort of like expected. Of course, he's going to do well there, and he's doing well there. And when I go to Fairhaven, oh, of course, we're in the state finals. Like, these things happen, but you don't know the time and effort that goes into it. You don't know the real conscious side of this, where you're just trying to get through it. You're trying to play. You're trying to, your team. You want your team to be successful going through this. And there's some other things that come with that, and some of it's good, some of it's bad. And my trust issues were really from the time I started playing at 7th grade, where I have a hard time playing with upperclassmen, because a lot of it was looked at as like I'm showing them up.
Yes.
Right, because I'm the best player on the floor, I'm the leading scorer as a 7th grader, and they don't have any idea what to do with this.
True. That's true. I can relate. I can relate a little bit. I can relate.
And again, they don't know me, and so the dynamics of trying to get to know me is difficult, because I'm always the youngest kid. I'm playing with freshmen, and I'm the 7th grader. So are we going to be in the same circles outside of school? Nope.
Nope.
So are we in the same part of school? Nope. We're in different sections of the school. So we cross paths in the gym, and that's it. That's all they know of me. And all they know of me is something socially with who I'm involved with socially. Other than that, they don't know me. So it gets to be hard. How come he's taking all the shots? How come he's the leading scorer? How come it's not me? I'm like, I don't know. I just know that the effort that I've put in and the things that I've done, that's where I am. Michael, I can't hear you.
Once it goes on, you gotta go back online, right? Ah, these fucking people. Not you. Ah, here we go. I get to that link.
Is Khan having some issues again?
I think, yeah, he froze up. Yeah.
Khan, come out, go out and come back in.
Just give me your name.
What's going on, Sergeant? How y'all doing today?
I'm back in. Hey, the call man is back in the building.
Well, y'all ain't had that much time left, so it's good it happened towards the end.
I'm here. There we go.
We can hear you, just can't see you, Khan, but keep going. You good, though.
Well, anyway, I want to get back to what Mike's personal basketball journal is about, because that's the reason why I want you on the show. So, Mike, please talk to the viewers about your basketball journey, and it entails. Why should people buy the journal or read the journal?
Well, that's the $1 million question, Michael. That's an issue I've had with myself for a long time, is trying to figure out, who would be interested in this besides the close circle of friends that I have in my family. So I don't know. That's I'm going to have to figure that out. So I think it comes down to the issue of what I mentioned earlier, as far as, there's a lot in there as far as sort of my challenges that I have to deal with. And, maybe again, there is something or someone I can help with some of the stuff that I've gone through that I was successful with or not. So maybe there's some lessons there that can actually help someone. And I'm hoping that's the case. I'm hoping that I can.
Honestly, is the fact that, I don't know, maybe or a while ago, I decided to write an article about the experiences playing against Dr. J at high school.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the wrong information. I was 16 years old, and I was in bar, and I had a great opportunity to play against Dr. J, although it was one-on-one, and it was all that, but it was a great experience. And then you checked me and let me know that who was responsible for having Dr. J in the building. And you checked me, and I apologize. It was a great experience. Can you let the viewers know what the experience was like for you? Because they don't know what I know about Dr. J and your
family. So for me and my family was, one of those things where you're hearing about the plannings of an event and you're never sure it's going to happen. And then when it occurs, like, it's just one of those things where you kind of get caught in a wave of it. All of a sudden, I'm hearing all these conversations throughout the summer with my father, and my father was trying to start a marketing firm, a sports marketing firm. And somehow the conversation turns to, well, who could we bring in to New Bedford to do a clinic? And because of the merger, the conversation turns to, well, we could get Julius Erving. And I was like, that's not going to happen. How is that going to happen? How are we going to get how are we going to get that guy to come to New Bedford? And Michael, all of a sudden, like, I blinked and he's standing in my kitchen. And so it was pretty scary. And of course, you're trying to act like it's not a big deal, but it was a very big deal. It was a big deal for my dad to pull this off, and the men that helped him and the people that came in to invest in some of this. And it was a big deal. And again, going back to telling my friends during that time that this was going to really happen, because I was a month or two at Holy Family, and I was telling them this is going to happen. They're like, no, it's not. I was like, this is happening. The deal has been signed. This is the day. This is where it's going to be. And sure enough, they're there, right? They're there with me sitting in the bleachers watching you play one-on-one with Julius. So it was a big deal for my family to have that execute. It was a big deal for my dad to actually pull that off. And, one of the sad things was it wasn't as successful as it had proposed to be. But, you and I have talked about this, Michael. So aside from my story, as far as how it impacts me, the cool story is your story, as far as I'm concerned, that it's how it impacts you. And many, many years later, you and I connect over that story. And yes, I did check you, but that's fine. But listening to your story and listening to how it impacted you and how you carry that story with you today, that's really cool, Michael. And that's our connection, right? Our connection came from that. Didn't come from playing basketball in the same area and playing against the same guys, playing for the same schools. That story came to you, for you, and it's a personal story for you. That's your story, but that's how we connected. So I'm for all is said to be done. If that's how you and I connected, that's great.
And it's a great thing. And again, I want to praise and honor your dad and those who made that incredible experience for a whole bunch of us young kids who were at New Bedford High School who never experienced seeing what we got to see. And it's a tribute to your dad and those that did what they did for us. I'll never forget it. And again, it brought us together. And now, all of a sudden, I invite you on my show. Now I don't want to get rid of you. You're my co-host, and we doing the damn thing, and it's a great thing. And hey, things happen for a reason. And
Yes.
if you are the intellectual one, I guess I don't know who I am. But hey, it's working. So that's all I can say.
Yeah, that's right. And I don't question it, Michael. Right? I don't do that. I kind of ride the wave with this, and I think it's a very, very nice thing that we connect over this, and that it's the weird things that bring people together. So that's I hold that to my heart. So.
And I want to thank you, and of course, the boss Key, because of my technical difficulties. But anyway, we're going to be on tonight at 9 p.m. with Cool McCain, top of the Key Network. And Key and Cool love you just like I do. And welcome to the network. Mike, you are the man. Any last words about your book, your journal, that you want to let the people know before we have to hit the
I'll make this very, very, very quick. So I'm still on path. I'm still on my timing as far as getting this done this summer. And I've been investigating some publishing options, hybrid publishing I'm looking at. So I'm trying to do as much as I can with the time that I can between client work and Michael, you and I talking online and podcasts and all this other stuff. So I'm still where I want to be. And so I anticipate, getting this done, getting it somehow with an editor and published in the next, 3-4 months. Maybe it's a nice Christmas gift. Maybe it's a nice stocking stuffer. Who knows? But that's where I am. So thanks for having me, Mike. Thanks for letting me talk about my book. And it's always great spending time with you.
Well, one thing before I go, Mike, is that you and I have this thing about the history of the FDA and the ABA. Your guy is Pistol Pete Maverick. My guy is Dr. J, etc. And we have that I don't know, we have that bind that we are together, and it's a great thing. And glad to have you on my show. You better not leave me at all. You heard? Anyway, we're on tonight. I want to thank you all for joining my show, Sports Corner with the Corn Man, and my co-host, Mike Semio, who's coming out with a new personal basketball journal. And tonight, we'll be on at 9 p.m. with Top of the Key with my man Cool McCain, and maybe even birthday girl, Key Williams. Thank you all for joining in. Take care. God bless.
Thank you, Michael.